8 to 10 a.m. and you're listening to Salam Media.
We will get an update on what's happening at the Masjid Al-Aqsa, storming of the mosque, 2 successive mornings, or even nights, I understand. So we'll talk about that pretty shortly. Let's, however, talk finance. My guest is Fungai Mbere, who's an investment associate at 24, let me get that right, investment associate at 274 investment managers. We'll be chatting to her shortly in a moment. Let me just tell you as well what's coming up. We have this feature called My First Ramadan. Our guest today is born in Malawi, but she's got a fascinating story to tell, and listen out for that. We'll also chat to Maulana Naimullah Chunara, and he's featured in that Imam on Focus feature. He's the Imam at the Masjid al-Firdaus and Juma Masjid in Polokwane. So looking forward to that conversation. And by the way, any further thoughts you may have on what we spoke about as, conscious or unconscious exclusion, 2 very important words, conscious stroke unconscious exclusion of people with disability in Muslim spaces. So in particular, it would be the masjid, the mosque, and the madrasas, the Islamic schools of learning, right? Any thoughts you have on that, you can post it on the bottom in the replies in any of the Salam Media social media platforms, or you can WhatsApp 061 766 0355. Okay, from guys with us, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Right. You've got 2-3 things you want to pick up on. Let's talk about what US private payrolls. Tell me about that.
Oh, yes. So we had the result that came out. We had a deceleration in terms of the job openings. They were down. They were below 10 million for the first time since 2021. And also the vacancies that are available, they've also gone down for the first time. So if we check with US inflation, the biggest hurdle that the Fed has been facing, it was the service sector, whereby wage inflation was going up, and it is one of the most factor why interest rates kept on going up. But now, since we're seeing the deceleration on the job openings as well as the private roles, which went down by 44% from last month, and also which were down by 31% from market expectations, it is a sign that the economy is slowing down, and it's also a sign that probably the monetary policies are now coming into play. So usually with monetary policy, it takes about 18 months. They lag to show with about 18 months. But if we check now, ever since the US started hiking, it was like somewhere in November, it was in March 2022. It has been a year, and already we can see that now the job sector is also taking a knock from the interest rates. And recently, in the past week, the earlier weeks of March, we saw that the banking sector also, it took a knock from the interest rate. So what I can say is now the monetary policy, the hawkish stance from the central banks, they are now starting to show effect, and we wait to see if the Fed is going to maintain its hawkish path, or they're going to pause and enter into a dovish stance.
And I get, that for South Africans, what happens in the USA does finally impact on South Africa, and therefore the decisions that people like your company 274 makes with regard to investments, right, and other people's money. One guy.
Sorry, can you? Pardon?
Yeah, I was saying. That
Yes,
impacts on how other people that impacts on the decisions that you make with regard to investments back home in South Africa, isn't it?
Yes, it do impact, because if you check now, especially in South Africa, it's a country which is a consumerism country, whereby the consumers they take a lot of debt, and it has been impacting in terms of car payments, in terms of bond payments. So now, if the central banks are reaching a pivot, it's also impacting in terms of the investment decisions that we're going to make, in terms of asset class that we're going to invest in. For example, when the central banks were hiking, cash was attractive, and cash was retaining attractive interest rates for investors. And equities, they were struggling. They took a knock from their heights. So now, if we're going to reach a pivot, it's now companies now, or we're also going to invest in growth stocks as well that we had neglected in favor of value stocks, because you find that in terms of during the past few months, most of the investment they have now been to value stocks. So now, if we are reaching a pivot, it shows that now investments can go back to equities, investments can go back to growth stocks as well. Yes.
All right. Let's talk very quickly about the termination of the national state of disaster. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so if you check on the 9th of February when it was announced, it was more of a political move from our point of view. And it was announced that, yes, we do agree that electricity, it was a crisis that was hindering production, it was hindering mining sector. As we could see the GDP, it went down. We agree with that. But in terms of declaring it as a national disaster, it seems like it was more of a political move. So from the 9th of February, it took about 3 weeks for the regulation to come into effect, and just after a month it is reversed. So what we see, what the country needed, it was to reduce the impact of the load shedding. It was to reduce the severity of load shedding, and that needed a more solution that is more. We support the 254 billion which was allocated. It somehow support the solar installation of solar panels and all that can be done without declaring electricity crisis as a national disaster. So now you could see there's been some inconsistent in terms of that decision. As we can see, there have been some civil groups which were taking the government to court in this decision, and we somehow view it as if the government, they come to realize that probably this was not necessary from the first place, and that's why they are reversing it.
Yeah.
But in terms of to the economy, we don't see it really impacting the economy, because ever since it was impacted, it has been a month. We didn't really see anything material that the status has done to the economy.
And okay, that's where we're going to leave it. Well, there seems to be some serious government retractions. I mean, this was the state of a disaster for a month, and then the other story of the last few days around ESCOM and the exclusions around irregular expenditure, that's been changed as well. But Fungai Vera, thank you for your time. Most appreciated. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Right. That's Fungai Mberev, who's an investment associate at 27/4. We do this every single day, weekdays, that is, during Ramadan, here on the Ashraf Ghana Show. Let's get an update in terms of the huge issues, the horrific, disturbing issues of the goings on at the Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, in Palestine, right after this.